And even at university, if you knew me then, trust me, you always knew I had something that I was selling. It would be clothing, hair, shoes. At some point, I even tried selling phones, guys. That backfired on me, so I would not advise anyone to do it. Welcome to another episode of Mbali Talks with me, Mbali, your platform for all things business, fashion, and lifestyle. In today's video, I'd just like to share a couple of advice that I would definitely go back and give myself if I was still between the ages of 23 to about 26. And even though this is advice for people who are younger, I do know that there's people who are my age, hashtag 32, that are still starting out in life, and I feel like this advice would definitely come in handy for them when they're trying to forge through their way in life. If you're new to our channel, thank you so much for stopping by. You just found one of the best channels on YouTube right now, so please don't leave without hitting that subscribe button so you can join our community. And if you've been with us since day one, thank you so much for coming back. You guys are the reason this channel stays alive, so thank you so very much. As you can tell, today's video is a bit more on the lifestyle side of things rather than business. However, I was just motivated by all the DMs that I always get, especially from younger women and sometimes women that are my age or older who feel like, you know what, Mbali, I just want to know, how did you get this far in life, or what advice would you give someone who's still starting out, or if I've just gotten my first job, what kind of advice would you give me going forward in terms of how I invest and save my money, etc, etc. And I thought it was only fair for me to come back on this channel and use this platform to be able to share just a couple of advices that I think if I was still a bit younger, or even 5 years ago when I was 27, these are the things that I probably would have applied. And even though at the time I was already practicing some of them, I still feel like had I started earlier in life, I would be way far. Like, guys, I would probably be the millionaire that I aspire to be, but you know what, I'm blessed with my life right now. However, I just thought, let me come back here and share with you this couple of tips, so I hope you guys stay tuned so that you don't miss out on anything that is happening on this video here today. So the first piece of advice I'd give myself if I was still younger is to say study part-time if you can. So when I was prospecting what I'm going to be doing with my life after I finished high school, one of my brothers suggested that I should consider studying part-time at places like UNISA, etc, etc. And even though at the time I was feeling like, oh my gosh, all my friends are going to university, I was kind of open to the idea because he had brought about the idea that I could actually get a job while studying part-time, hashtag make a bit of money. And if you know me, you know I love money, guys. But however, as time went on, or as the holidays went on towards deciding what I wanted to do when I finished high school, my brothers just thought, you know what, maybe you need like some university experience where you're on res and you're interacting with other kids and you just know what it's like to be a full-time student, which is why I ended up taking my degree full-time. But looking back now, I think if I had stuck to the route of studying part-time instead of being a full-time degreed student, I would have probably gotten a head start in life, in the sense that I would have gotten a job, I was still going to be staying at home because I was still very young, and also I didn't have a kid. So there's just so many benefits that I think I would have probably gained from studying part-time and having a job instead of going into school full-time. And even though I appreciate and do not devalue the kind of life lessons that I've learned being a full-time student, being on VAS, interacting with other students, I still do think I would have probably gotten more or less the same kind of experience, but of course with the bonus of having a job and therefore finance. And you know how our societies are, being a black kid, being able to start early, being able to just save more money from the beginning instead of getting into debt from the get-go would have obviously put me ahead compared to a lot of my peers, you know. So it's definitely advice that I would consider taking if I were probably between the ages of, I don't know, maybe 18 now, if you consider that point. But if you're maybe 23 and you've just finished your high school, which is highly possible, this is kind of advice that I would give you when it comes to figuring out how you're going to move forward in terms of your tertiary education. My second tip for my younger self, which is so controversial but so very important, is focus on self-development and not love. So like I said, this point is very controversial because I know that from a young age as a woman, you're kind of engineered to want or to aspire towards marriage, you know. And even though I got married when I was 27, I honestly do think I was probably later than a lot of other people, but at the same time I was earlier than a couple of my other peers. And I still stand by the thing that I just feel like there's no time frame to getting married, guys. There's no time frame to finding the love of your life. You could literally be 40 and still find the love of your life, you know. So I feel like there's a lot of time, because I was those students that were very sort of committed in relationships, like as the person who would get into a relationship and not these side hustles that people do nowadays. And I just feel like had I spent all that time sort of investing in myself, maybe starting a side hustle, learning a new skill outside of my schoolwork, besides just being in a relationship with someone else, I'd have probably been more sort of life-wise, you know. I'd have probably gotten a bit more wiser when I was younger. I'd have explored better, because now, even though I'm older and I do have the money to do more exploration, I'm kind of a bit more scared because I'm older, you know. The anxiety kicks in at some point and you just find yourself not taking as many risks as you would than when you were younger. And I just feel like young girls or young people, they sit there on their phones, all they're focusing on is figuring out if the person texted back, or if you're going on a date with them, or if it's Valentine's and they're making a hype about it, instead of sitting there and just trying to maybe learn a new skill, get online, go on Udemy, go on Show Academy, try to get a skill that maybe will not necessarily get you a job in the future, but it's a nice to have type of skill. There's so many platforms. There's also Skillshare, where people teach about basically anything, more or less the same way that we do here on YouTube, except that with there it's just like proper classes and proper teaching. It's not just talking through my vlogs or whatever. So I definitely think if I was younger, I'd have probably focused more on trying to find myself, trying to see what other skills that I can take on as I'm growing so that I can improve myself, you know, maybe even learn a new language, instead of all the energy that you find yourself as a young person trying to put into a relationship. And if we're quite honest, guys, younger boys don't put as much effort into those relationships the way that we do as women. So as a young girl, being 23 or even 20 or 21, I would definitely consider trying to focus more on self-development instead of finding love. And I'm not disputing you being in a relationship, but if the relationship is good, great, good for you. However, in my experience, especially with the younger girls that I find myself trying to play big sister to, you find the relationship that you're in is not exactly the most glamorous thing, but you're there, you're unhappy, you're young, you have a person telling you not to go out because they're your boyfriend. I'm like, child, what? Are you crazy? So you would not be going through all those things if what you focused on was finding yourself, your likes, your dislikes, what you're strong at, your weaknesses, so that you can just build yourself a strong person, and then so that by the time you meet someone who's actually worth your time, they really find you being a proper full package, you know? My third tip to my younger self is to try and find a career that is more in line with your passion than anything else, you know? So I was an A student when I was younger. I think I still am if I were to be in a class. So I was an A student, and automatically, being a person who always gets A's, you just kind of attract the attention of teachers or lecturers and even your family members who feel like they want to tell you what kind of career is actually booming at the time, and that they think with your skills, or rather with your intelligence, you'd probably be able to crack. And for me, that was to being a chartered accountant. And when I agreed to it, I just thought to myself, my brothers were like, no, chartered accountants, you know, you qualify and then you make a lot of money and then you live your best life, you know. And I thought to myself, hello, I love money, so this is definitely a career I'm going to be going into. And I knew that I had the mental capacity to be able to actually make it in the field. However, while I was thinking which kind of course to apply for at the university, I honestly was generally drawn to being a lawyer, you know. And I think you can tell from my videos, I don't probably made a kick-ass lawyer, you know. But anyway, here we are. And I just think if maybe I had decided to choose something that I felt that I was more connected to, because I felt like I was more connected to being a lawyer or to studying LLB, if I had studied that, I'd have probably been an amazing lawyer. I probably would not have given up on that career path the way that I did with the CA route, you know. And even though, like I said, I appreciate my life, I appreciate all the life lessons that I've received, and I appreciate the fact that I am now actually an entrepreneur, I do believe that if I had actually studied LLB, I'd probably have a business in that field instead of having a business in all the other fields that I have, because quite honestly, I was not enjoying accounting, guys. I was smart for it, I was good at it. I even got a job at one of the big 4 firms in the world, guys, PwC, but still I was just not genuinely happy, or rather I'm motivated by the career, you know, which is why at some point it was very easy for me, even though I had to go through a lot at the time when I was deciding it, but it was just very easy for me to decide, okay, this is not for me, I don't want this anymore. And even now, I never see myself opening up or starting up an accounting firm. I'm good with having an accountant do my books. Even though I do have an accounting background, I'm good paying somebody else to do that, because I feel like that's something they're probably passionate about and I'm not. I'd rather use my energy doing videos, running my hair business, running my clothing business, than being in that field. So I would definitely advise you to try and sit down with yourself, or even just explore a couple of careers, or try to shadow a couple of people who are in an industry that seems like something you'd be happy doing, and see what it is that you're drawn to, so that you can easily find yourself doing that as a career, instead of spending 4 years getting a degree and another year getting a postgrad, only to realize in the 7th year that actually this is not something that I'm happy with, and then you start diverting at the time. And like I said, the sooner you start, or the sooner you figure things out, it just allows you to be way ahead of the curve than all your other peers by the time you are probably 25 or even 30 or even my age, you know. So I definitely consider that as a definite life tip for you if you're still young. My fourth tip of advice to myself if I was still young, and it's obviously the reason why we're always on this platform, is to try and find a side hustle that you can start. So when I was younger, and this is university, you know, I had a cousin who did a lot of travels between Mozambique and Swaziland, trying to stock up, sell shoes. They have a lot of these brands that they sell there, if you know what I mean. But anyway, so she was into that a lot, and she used to work at the manufacturing firms in Matapa. If you know Matapa, it's like an industrial space basically. And she used to sell those things there, and quite honestly, I just often felt like it made her a lot of money at the time, even though she was working full-time in one of the factories. So obviously, one year when I got my allowance, I decided, you know what, I want to start a side hustle. I want to make a bit of extra money for myself, even though I'm getting a bit of pocket money from home. But it would just be nice and comfortable to randomly have money to buy a top at Mr. Price, for example, you know. And so I joined her, or I started joining her on these trips, you know. We'd wake up in the morning, get into a taxi, drive all the way to the border, cross the border, go into Mozambique, and it's literally like markets for days on the streets. I would sell hair, I would sell bags. And also, these are some of the things that I'd even sell, having bought them from Small Street here in Joburg, you know. But going to Mozambique, I just wanted to sort of widen my horizon, you know, bring in a variety so that I can kind of stay ahead of the competition of people who are actually doing the same thing at the time. And trust me, that money, you know, it took me a long way, guys. I literally used to have no problem thinking I want to visit my friends in Pretoria who were studying at UP or who were studying at TUT. I would literally pay my taxi fee, get into a taxi, and go and visit them. When I get there, I would have fun, I'd have money to buy clothes, I'd have money to even go out, you know, ×4, if you know ×4. You know, we'd go out on Thursdays, student nights. But I would not have been able to do all those things if I was not trying to have a side hustle while still at university, you know. And I know it can feel a bit overwhelming to think, you know what, you have a full-time degree and at the same time you're trying to start a side hustle. However, it's not that deep, guys, especially if you're a student who has the kind of capabilities that I had, or you're the kind of student that really just works hard. Trust me, it does not become rocket science to try and run a side hustle, because remember, you don't even have a shop that you need to wake up to. You just have a couple of products, probably in your dorm or in your res apartment, where people can come and actually buy. And whether you believe it or not, students tend to have a lot of money because they get pocket money from their parents. They also get, you know, these bursaries that they get, which kind of gives them a certain allowance, you know. And I know the times have changed. However, I would still advise myself, if I were younger, to get a side hustle, because that money went a long way, guys. I was living my best life in university, and also I just felt it really did protect me from the whole sugar daddy syndrome or blesser syndrome, where people would get into relationships with older men and or women just because they want a bit of money or they want a bit of extra clothes or fancier clothes. I did not suffer through those things, guys, because I was always hustling. And I knew that at some point I needed to stop my hustle and focus on my schoolwork when it came to tests, assignments, or exams. But I just always tried to continue to have something that was going on in my life in the terms of a side hustle, you know. And even at university, if you knew me then, trust me, you always knew I had something that I was selling. It would be clothing, hair, shoes. At some point, I even tried selling phones, guys. That backfired on me, so I would not advise anyone to do it unless you're sure of the product that you're selling. However, it didn't stop me from continuing to try to do a side hustle and also just creating money on the side for myself, that if honestly I had saved that money and reinvested it at the time, which of course you can now, I would have probably been able to buy my first car cash, you know. So it's definitely something that I would look into if you're of a younger age or if you're just still starting out in life. My fifth and final piece of advice to someone who's still starting out in life is to avoid credit card debt as much as possible. So I know that I had a couple of advantages when I was younger. I had older brothers who would always give me money. I had a side hustle, you know. I had an aunt who had really gone out of her way to raise us, even though my mom had passed away, you know. I did have all those advantages at my disposal, but still I was not a trust fund baby, you know. I didn't have money to start out when I was buying furniture for my first apartment, or when I thought of starting out and buying a car. I didn't have those luxuries of someone saying to me, you know what, here's a car, we're going to buy it for you, or you're 21 now, here's your key, here's your car key, you know. So part of the things that I kind of ended up finding myself doing when I was younger is to take up a bit of credit card debt. And my first credit card was with Edgar's, guys, believe it or not, because I was an audit clerk and I just thought I needed to have a bit of clothing so that I can, you know, kind of look good every day and look formal with the clients. It was all well and good, except for the times when I started realizing that I was spending so much money trying to pay my credit card debt, because when you're young and you have a credit card, you go wild. I mean, there's people my age who still cannot handle having a credit card, and they find themselves always splurging or whatever it is, just because at the back of their mind they know that they have money that they can borrow every now and again and pay off over a longer period. And even though it makes sense for you to have some form of credit when you're starting out in life, credit card debt is not the first one that I would go for if I was still starting out, you know. Also, it just makes you feel like you have money when in fact you don't have money. And people often say, I've actually read it somewhere, and I think I've seen it in videos somewhere from these people that inspire me every day. They say something like, if you need to buy it on credit, then it means you can't afford it, you know. And I'm not even talking about houses or cars or studying part-time. I feel like those are big things, and some of them are actually investments in the form of studying and or buying a property. However, if it's just a card for you to swipe at the shop, or an Edgar's card or a Truett's card, there's really no need for you to go and get one. If you need to still stay wearing Mr. Price because Mr. Price is what you can afford because it's cheaper, go and do that. Don't try to be living on some Zara or Forever New type of budget or type of clothing on a credit card. It will just set your credit card score a bit back by the time you want to do proper things like buying property, or even buying a car, or even getting a personal loan to help you continue building something, you know, like an investment or whatever. It will just work against you, the fact that you seem like you are very high on the credit card side. And also, when banks do a review on you, they're going to be like, well, you don't really have a lot of money to spare so that you can take on a new debt in the form of a house or in the form of a car. Therefore, they're going to limit the amount of money that they would be willing to borrow you if they were to consider borrowing you. So I would definitely stay away from credit card debt, guys, especially when you're young. There's really no need for it. I often think, you know, I would have loved to have money to furnish my house, you know, when I was starting out, buy all these nice fancy couches, but guys, it's really not necessary. Like, I'm sitting here on this couch which is in my study, and I literally bought it for 2.2. And even though it's a sleeper couch, maybe that's what you need when you're starting out, you know. Buy yourself a sleeper couch so that if you want to be able to use it as a bed, you can. However, you just don't need to be spending a lot of money trying to do all these big things that you think you now suddenly have to do, you know. The stuff that I wish I could buy in my house, but I don't buy it because I feel like I'm not going to spend 6,000 Rand buying a mirror. There really is no need. Also, I just always consider myself moving out at some point to this big house with all these fancy fittings, and at that point I know that some of the furniture that I have here that I bought cheaper will be irrelevant at the time. So can you imagine a situation where I went, took my credit card and bought all the nice furniture, and then in 5 years time when I move out, I still feel like I need new furniture because this furniture is now outdated, because also I'm starting out a new life, so I want people to walk into my house and find new fittings. It's just not necessary, guys. Stay away from credit card debt unless and only until it is super necessary. And also, even then, you must know that are you a person who's able to handle debt? And if you know that you are not, stay away from it, you know. So the points that I have on this video, to be quite honest, it's like a 10-point system, but I decided to cut it at 5 because obviously I want you guys to not get bored, you know. And also I just thought it would be fun to make it into a 2-part series, so I'll definitely look out for the second part because this is only part 1, as I have so much things that I feel like if I were younger, I would have stayed away from or have done differently. And I definitely want to share those things with you guys so that you guys can obviously live your best lives going forward, you know. If you've made it to the end of the video, I hope you've enjoyed enjoyed these points, and I hope that they've been helpful for you. And yes, I do hope that you are carrying a notebook, because that's what we always do on this channel, honey. And if you've not joined our community, please don't play yourself. Just hit that subscribe button over there so that you can join us. And please leave me a comment, like, and also share this content on your other social media platforms so that we can keep growing this community. And also tell me what it is that you'd like to see on this channel going forward, honey. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to see you in second part of this video. Cheers.